originally from Miami, and I've been living in Paris for about 12 years. In 2006, I was living in Miami, and I had a date. And I was waiting for him to come and pick me up, and he was actually running late. He called and told me he was actually having car trouble, and he wanted to know whether I had a car, and if I actually minded driving. And I told him, I said, yes, I have a car. I said, it's no problem, I don't mind driving at all, because he says he didn't want to take a chance of us taking his car, his Jeep, and something actually happening. I told him that when he got to my building to valet park his car and to call me up and I would come and pick him up. And that's what he did. So when I came in front of my building to pick him up, he was in the front and his mouth just dropped. He was in shock. I had pulled up in a 2001 convertible Porsche Boxster. It was tan, excuse me. It was tan, it was a navy blue on the outside, and it was actually tan interior. I think it's dark. Yes. Make it bigger. This was the car that I actually pulled up in. And when he got into the car, he asked me, he goes, whoa, this is your car? And I said, yes, it's my car. So he got into my car, and he looked at me as we were pulling off, and he asked me, are you renting in this building, or are you an owner? And I said that I was an owner. Next slide, please. At that moment, his entire demeanor had dropped. He got into the car, this is the lobby in front of my building. He got into the car, and talking to him was like pulling teeth. I was always going to initiate the conversation. He was very dry. It was a very, very similar conversation. Now, what he didn't know about the car was that that car was my 31st birthday present to myself. Even more so, it was actually my reward for finally passing the Illinois bar exam and to be able to practice law, which I'd actually failed twice. About the condo, next slide please. The white building right there. What he didn't know was in that building, I actually rented before I actually bought. And in order for me to actually buy, I had to do the unthinkable, which was actually save money. And for an entire year, I literally saved $2,000 every single month to come up with a down payment. What he also didn't know was that the day that I actually closed on that property, I was actually short $135 or something like that. And I literally had to borrow the 100 and something to actually get the full amount into for my closing. And this whole process, like literally, I spent an entire year with friends who asked me to go out. Anything that involved money, I always said no, because I was saving to actually buy this piece of property. You see, had he actually given me the chance, I would have shared all of his details with him, right? But he didn't. Right away, he was able to judge me. He was sizing me up, and he thought I was, I don't know what, but he had no idea of my backstory. And this is what actually happens. Because why? Everybody only sees the BMW, or in my case, it was a Porsche. Next slide, please. And so today, I actually want to talk to you about this. That is the journey of being an entrepreneur. What it's really like, the truth of it all. I'm going to talk to you about the difficulties about it and the challenges of it. And I'm also going to talk to you about what we're actually seeing about entrepreneurship, which is not the truth. I'm going to talk about the glamorization of it. I'm going to talk about the romanticism. I'm going to talk about the social media facade, and dare I even say it, the lies. Because really it's all curated. And so before I even get into that, I'm going to tell you how that my journey as an entrepreneur, I'm going to tell you this story, not as a 14-year entrepreneur and business owner, but also as a business law attorney for 19 years advising strictly entrepreneurs, corporations, startup companies. So I know a little bit what I'm actually talking about. Next slide, please. But before I actually got started to actually be an entrepreneur, my journey actually started in this building in Miami. There I was a young associate working for an international law firm, and I was working 14 hours a day. I was working 7 days a week, and on the weekends I was actually working a full 8-hour day. Like a young associate at a big law firm or a mid-sized law firm, I had to bill 22 hours per year. which meant I had no life. I was absolutely miserable. I was driving a beautiful car. I was only a beautiful walk in Miami, and I had some clothes to match, but inside, I was dying. In fact, things were so bad. My very first year of working for this law firm, I didn't even go home for Christmas. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving. I worked in Easter. I was constantly working. After about a year about this, I couldn't take it anymore because like literally, it was like working in a pressure cooker. And I decided to look for another job. And so I spent an entire year in Miami, going from interviewing with different law firms and different banks and different organizations. And I kept hearing the same thing, which was, Wani, you're too expensive. He said the thing was, I was actually working in the Miami office of a Chicago-based law firm. And Chicago has one of the highest salaries when it comes from professionals, whereas Miami has some of the lowest. And for me, I could not afford to make a single penny less than I was making because I had a mortgage to pay, right? And so everywhere I went, I kept hearing Wani is too expensive, and I was like, it was always in the salary negotiations. I was like, I'm sorry, I can't make a penny less. For me, it was either a lateral move or above. And so after hearing this for a whole year, I decided, you know what, maybe it's not meant for me to actually work for somebody else. I said, you know what, maybe I'm actually meant to work for myself. And so I decided to start my own law firm. But before I could actually do that, fate would step in and I would get laid off. Next slide, please. And that is how my first law firm, my first business, W. Manly, PA and Associates, was actually born. I started off with most entrepreneurs with $0 and 0 clients. However, on the day that I got laid off, one of my girlfriends called me to invite me to go to a party, and I was like in tears, and she like begged me to go with her for about an hour. And I went to a party in Miami, and as fate would actually have it, right? What I see from the sign from the universe is the direction you're supposed to go into. I met my very first client, a management company, with the CEO of a management company that managed celebrities and athletes in Miami. He had hired me to actually set up the company. Next slide, please. And my first retainer was a whopping $500. I was like, woo! And so I felt really good. I got started, right? But then it took months for the next client to come in. Like most entrepreneurs, I didn't know, at the time, I didn't know anything about running a business. I didn't come from a business-minded family. And so I didn't know, all I knew was how to be a lawyer. I didn't know how to market myself. I knew nothing about how to run a business. I didn't know how to attract clients. I spent months chasing my tail, and I had no strategy. In fact, hope and praying was my method, was my strategy. I had no personal development skills whatsoever, and I also didn't have a mentor. Clients for me were few and far in between, so which meant I was living in survival mode. Next slide, please. I was stressed out. I now had the freedom that I had actually been craving from my previous law firm job, but I had lost the salary and the security and the cushion that I actually had before. I was attracting clients that could not afford my fees because I was working for an international law firm, so I had big clients at the firm, right? And so I did what most entrepreneurs do, which is I struggled in silence. I didn't tell anyone because also too, I wanted to prove myself. And also too, I had a mortgage to pay. And so on the outside, I presented quite well, everything kept it together like I am right now. But in the inside, I was so stressed out. How many entrepreneurs are here in the room today? Does it sound familiar?
Yes.
Am I losing it?
No.
This is the case for most entrepreneurs, just that people are not speaking about it.
Right.
Next slide, please. However, I began to develop myself. I found coaching, and I began to really embody the business, a different mentality of how I actually was running my business. And actually, my life now looks completely different than when I started 14 years ago. One company has now turned into 3. I have 2 companies in the United States, and I also have a company here in France. I'm now a professional speaker. I've spoken on a TEDx stage. I've written multiple best-selling books, been featured in many magazines, and I'm actually going to be in a movie documentary on a very popular network that everybody watches next year. Another one. That's been the TEDx stage, one of the magazines. But I want to share with you and say that if I could come up with one image that really surmises my experience in the 14 years actually that's led me to this point, next slide please, it is this popular diagram. Who here have seen this before?
The illusion success. Okay.
Yeah, right? And so this is actually where I was most of the time, the journey, and where a lot of entrepreneurs actually are, right? And so I want to talk to you about what's really at the very bottom of that. Next slide, please. What's really out there? You know, what it is like literally, it's like everything in the kitchen sink. It's all what's underneath that's going on when you're trying to run a business, right? What we're looking at is actually limiting beliefs about money, about your self-worth, your low self-esteem, your anxiety, your stress, the living in survival mode, the taking one step forward and taking 5 steps backwards. You're not operating in your zone of genius because when you're working for yourself, you're everything. You're the banker, you're the lawyer, you're the accountant, you're the marketing developer, you're the priest. I mean, you're just like, you're wearing a hat. So you're not, I mean, I did it, right? You're not operating in your zone of genius. And of course, there's the loneliness and the isolation because it's like literally you and your shadow running your business right off of your computer. And then everything is a freaking experiment. It's all trial and error. You have no idea. It's like literally you throwing spaghetti against the wall and you're hoping something actually is gonna stick.
Yep.
Next slide, please. And then also too, like I said, hope and prayer was my business strategy. It's a business strategy for a lot of people, right? I'm gonna pray about it. How many Christians here are from, right? That's one of my business, right? And then you're constantly comparing yourself to other people.
Yes.
You know, especially nowadays with social media. You know, when I first started out, social media wasn't around. But nowadays, like everybody's like seeing exactly what everyone is actually doing. Then there's all this self-judgment, right? And then you're comparing yourself to other people and you're feeling like crap and you're feeling like a complete failure. Sound familiar?
Yes, yes.
But let me tell you something. You know, if there's one maxim that I've actually been given to me, it is this, that if it were so easy, everybody would be doing it, and they're not. And everybody would be super successful at it, and they're not. And so if you're in this room right now, and if you're feeling like crap, if you're always like, oh my gosh, I feel attacked, I want to give you some stats on entrepreneurship so you can stop feeling bad for yourself and give yourself some grace. Next slide, please. According to Kauffman Foundation, only 6% of all entrepreneurs ever achieve making $100,000 in their very first year of business. Only 2% ever achieve making 7 figures, and that's the first 1 million. And to make the next million, the numbers drop. For women, it's even less than that. And then for women of color, it's way less than that, okay? And then more than 50% of all business owners never exceed making $25,000 a year. Ouch.
Wow.
Why do you think this is? Anybody want to guess?
Scarcity, fear,
Mindset.
mindset.
And suffering in silence, just not asking the question.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to say it. I'm not saying you're in the room, I'm not yelling at you, but I'm just saying like nobody really wants to admit it's freaking hard.
Yep.
Next slide, please. And so I want to talk to you today about what really makes this journey hard, and when I actually begin to, and I'm going to also talk to you about how to get away from that, what actually put me on the other side of actually struggle. Number one is that entrepreneurship is a journey of personal development.
Yep.
I call it baptism by fire. You think you're about to run a business, you're not. You're about to go into a deep dive about yourself.
Yeah.
And you're not equipped for it unless, I mean, I know when I started, I had not been in spirituality, I had not been in personal development, and I literally had no idea that this is actually what I was actually getting into. What it is, like you're about to start looking at that what's causing everything on the outside is what's in the inside, which is your conditioning, your limiting beliefs. Next slide, please. Number two, next one. It is your mindset. Now, you have the mindset when you start a business as an employee, because most of us, I know I was in my family, I was first generation entrepreneur. My parents both worked for companies. My father worked for the West African, he worked for the Liberian government in West Africa. And the problem is that you're trying to run a business as an owner, as a CEO, but you have a worker bee mentality and a worker bee and as an employee. And so what you've done for yourself is that you've actually have created a glorified job for yourself. And you're literally a glorified employee calling yourself, I have my own business. And it's never going to work as, a successful business will never work as long as you're in that framework, in that embodiment of an employee and not as an owner. Next thing is that you have unrealistic expectations about the journey. Spoiler alert, your success is going to take a lot longer than what you think.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. And I'm telling you, anyone who's telling you that it's easy, they're lying. Unless they're starting with they're taking over a family business, unless they have partners, unless they're buying an existing business. I'm talking to people that are pulling the straps of what they say from the bootstraps, right? Like you just start from 0, 0, 0, 0, right? So it's gonna take a lot longer, and I want to share towards the end of my presentation some great examples of that. The next one is if you bought into the maxim of build it and they will come. Who's heard that one before, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't work. You're gonna actually have to need real business skills and real marketing skills to actually attract your people and to make them buy from you, and that's the psychology behind that, which isn't common knowledge. So the maximum pyramid will come. I mean, who here has actually launched a program? I know there's many coaches here and nobody has bought. This is a safe space. Oh, you right, or the launch club, right? That's what did you keep building? Nobody came, right? Exactly. And the next thing is like you're too prideful, and I'm super guilty of that. It's like you don't want to ask for help, and you don't want to actually get a job because for some reason we think that by asking for help, it's like there's a shame thing going on here. And it's like getting a job, which would probably be like the best answer, not like a full-time job, but get like a supplemental income. We feel like we've gone backwards, and it's actually not, because what you're needing is like something to release the thinking financial pressure, because you're always thinking, how am I gonna make money, right? And so those are things we don't do, and it's just like it hinders us. And the last thing I'm gonna say is like this is like a charity. And this is the case with so many service-based entrepreneurs, the coaches, the healers, the travel people, that you're not selling a product, but you're selling yourself when you are the business, right? And especially the women in the room, right? Because we're so nurturing and we're so heart-centered, and so we have no boundaries. People come up with their soft stories, and our prices are fluctuating, right? We have trouble asking for the sale. We have trouble by saying what our prices are. It's like, what's the price? Right? That's what makes it actually hard. Next up, please. And so I want to actually share with you now what really got me over on the other side of all that in hot class, okay? Number one is like you've got to invest in yourself, and you've got to invest in your learning. For me, it was like discovering coaching and coaches and getting to business groups, right? And at the very least, or at the earliest you can, if you can actually get a mentor involved in the picture, even better. But there's tons of books out there. Tony Robbins, everything out there is free for him. I mean, there's everything that's on the internet, right? There's no shortage of information actually, how to run a business, how to change your mindset, how to become who you actually want to be. That's very, very key to changing the mindset. Number two, oh my God, you have to look at your relationship with money. Let me tell you something, you'll never realize you have a money issue when you have like limited beliefs around money until you start running a business and you like there's no money coming in. Because when I was working for that law firm 14 hours a day, it was a very, really nice firm where literally everything was provided for me. I had a secretary, I had a paralegal, I had an accountant on staff, my lunches were usually bought from expensive restaurants, bagels were always bought in every Friday. Like, I mean, literally everything was there. My garage was paid for, my health care was paid for, but when I opened up my own law firm, I had to pay for all of that stuff, and the money just quite wasn't there. And I had to realize, my God, I have a limited belief that says I have to work hard for money, I don't deserve money, I'm not worthy of it. All these things comes up when you start running your own business. Number three is you literally have to learn marketing skills. I did not know how to market myself at all because, again, I was working for a cushy law firm job where the partner got the business and just gave me the work, and I was just the worker being actually having to do it. And so learning how to actually like put yourself out there in terms of like how to like attract the right people, the right messaging, those things actually have to like be generated and to be learned, because you're not going to be able to run a successful business based on a great idea alone. The next thing is like you've got to ignore what's on social media, and especially on Instagram, because it's all a curated facade, okay? On Instagram, everybody is winning. Everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, am I wrong? Everybody. Like, there's nobody that was complaining. Everyone has luxury. They're wearing luxury items. They're flying first class. And it's literally, you have to ignore it. You have to stay focused and focus on your business. I'm telling you, it's not the truth. People are lying on social. I'm not saying all, but a lot of people are lying on social media. It's been proven people are lying about their incomes, especially in the coaching industry, about how many clients they actually have, because who's actually verifying that, right? People are not doing a due diligence. They're selling a lifestyle, and that's what everybody's seeing. And so people are just like, okay, here, they can say whatever they want, right? Ignore social media. The next thing is you have to develop emotional intelligence and emotional resilience.
Come on now.
When I started my business, I had no idea like what those two phrases meant, right? But I'm telling you, you're gonna need it like nobody's business, because you're gonna go through many valleys like this. You're gonna be like in the dark nights of the soul, which is like dark months and dark years, quite actually, which is not a bit dark. And so you're gonna be able to have to be able to weather the storm. And to not be reactive, but to just say, you know what, I'm okay. Like, I'm actually okay, because all your fears are gonna be up, and you really have to have emotional resilience, because guess what? The average overnight success takes about 10 years. That's real talk. I'm not saying it has to be like for everyone, but generally speaking, that's what it is. You also have to connect with other people. And I know so for many of us, we're all running our businesses, like I said, with our shadows, right? It's us and our laptop, and social media, and that's it. And so we're not connecting with people anymore. You've got to get out of your rooms and get out of your apartments and your homes and go to coffee shops and go and work with, and just sit, be in a restaurant. I mean, I live here in Paris, and so it's very easy, just like it's Cafe Central, right? And so it just changes your energy. And I want to show you that I was in law school. One of my professors said to us, he says, network or not work. That has stuck with me like my entire life. You've got to start talking to people, because I know for myself, like probably many of you here in the room that are all high achievers, where we're all used to getting things based on our own merit, correct? Like you work hard, you put for something and you get it, right? But at a certain point in life, when you go to a certain level, you're gonna need people. You're gonna have like connections to actually make things a lot easier for you. The next thing is, you've got to know your numbers. Listen, for 19 years I've been working with literally only bosses, okay? They all know their numbers daily. You cannot be an ostrich and not look at your bank statements, not looking at what you owe, not opening your mail, and not knowing like what your numbers are, what your quarterly goals are, what your weekly targets are. None of those things. You've got to actually know like what they are. Next slide, please. The next thing is you've got to be a problem solver. You just can't be a storyteller. And I'm saying that because we're in a day and age of social media where you have to have a social media presence, and it's all about storytelling, right? And everyone's like putting inspirational quotes and talking about this and that, but listen, at the end of the day, you've got to be able to solve people's problems when you don't have a business, you have a hobby. People will look at your story, they can look at your pictures and say, okay, how can you help me? And if you can't help quantitatively help people, you're not gonna have customers. Next thing is you gotta treat the business like a real business. My goodness, from day one. You know, many people start their businesses without talking to a lawyer, without talking to an accountant, without like having any kind of business plan, even if it's a one-pager. They just like, I have an idea, here I'm doing this. I'm telling you, you don't have a business. You really have to have, I mean, here in France, I love that you're here in Europe, because or instead of a business, you actually have to work with CPA next to the company. You have an actual accountant who's regulated, where it's the United States, where it's like literally you roll out of bed, you go on like the division of corporations on any website, you can set it up yourself, your LLCs, right? Or your fictitious name registration. You've got to treat your business like a real business, because here's the thing, a business is part energetics and part like the physicalities of it. And in order for your business to be a real business, you got to treat it from day one. What I'm talking about, talk to a lawyer, register your IPs, use lawyer written contracts and not DIY, or go piece by piece by piece by piece. Do whatever you can do, but have a lawyer involved in your business like from day one. The next piece is this: success is not going to just happen like by happenstance. You literally have to plan for it. You can't wing it. If you want to be a millionaire, you're not gonna wing it. It's not gonna happen by winging it, right? And the next thing is the freedom piece, because I know this was so pertinent for me as to why, which was my why I actually started. And I know it is the case for many people out there, right? We all wanted money freedom, time freedom, motherly freedom to be able to watch our kids wherever you want. It's like we all wanted to not be controlled anymore. But I'm gonna tell you something, a freedom-based business requires structure. If you see someone now that's like not working on the golf course or like having drinks or not working because they're like rich, it's because 6 or 7 years ago, they created systems to be able to have that lifestyle. So it really requires structure. But for me, that was the biggest shift for me for my business. I had to start working. The next is you've got to value yourself, you've got to charge accordingly for it. I don't know what it is, like when you start your own business, it's like all of a sudden like you just pull back. You want more money, but when it comes to like charging for it, your value, you have a different self-image of yourself, and that actually affects like your pricing. Charge for it. Charge, own your value.
Amen.
The next is you gotta celebrate yourself and celebrate your achievements every day. And I want to hear a very, very quick story about this, and it's called The Power of One. I know in the day of social media where it's all about, you know, followers and vanity metrics and just having like a bunch of people going viral, right? The title of this actual presentation, Everybody Else is the BMW, came to me like this. In 2019, I did a Facebook Live kind of talking about similar things right here, how the struggles of actually an entrepreneur. And I was also talking about the same thing with me living in Paris, how during the early years that was so difficult for me. And I could never call my friends in Miami and talk to them about, gosh, I don't have any friends. It's so lonely that people are strange here because everyone's like, oh my God, you're living in Paris. It's beautiful. It's Eiffel Tower. I was like, nobody wanted to hear it, right? And so I did a Facebook Live in a Facebook group, and then I was actually guided to the same Facebook Live on my personal page. And even though I speak now, I don't like the whole virtual thing very much. And so I did it on my personal page, and one person watched the audio, okay? And she didn't even watch the entire thing. And she actually emailed, she's like, wow, I saw your story, because I think, you know, you have an amazing story. Because I actually know some of my network that's actually doing a big summit at a castle in Northern Ireland, and she's looking for speakers. And I want to connect you with her. Her name is Shelley. So this woman connected me with Shelley. I didn't know who she was at all. Shelley and I, we had a conversation, and I was booked to speak in a huge, amazing castle with members of the royal family. At that castle, I met a $10,000 client from there, and I also met a woman named Karen, who has one of the biggest publishing companies in Australia. Remember when I told you I'm actually in a movie documentary?
Yes.
Karen's the producer of that.
Wow.
At that same talk in Ireland, I actually met Karen's sister Emma, and I spoke with her for maybe 3 minutes. 2 years after that, Emma lands in my inbox on Facebook. She's like, hey, Wani, I have the license to do a TEDx in Northern Ireland on June 9th. Will be available for me. That's how I got my TEDx.
Wow.
You normally have to try out for TEDx. And none of those things came to me. And there's so many things I can't talk about because I have an NDA, but it's just so, one Facebook Live, it didn't go viral, I didn't have a million people watching it, it didn't get passed around, but just one thing, right? Last thing is you gotta remember why you actually do this journey. What's the point? Have fun doing it. Next slide, please. One of my favorites, as I'm coming to a close here now, is I want to talk about, this is my 2 favorite success stories. This is Uri Levine, who was the co-founder. You guys use Waze on your,
Yeah.
This is the co-founder of Waze. I actually saw him speak years ago in Miami at a tech conference. And what people don't know about Uri Levine is that he was a serial entrepreneur. He actually started about, if I remember, 10 or 13 startup companies that all flopped. And he was going through this journey, this entrepreneur journey, and he wasn't making any money whatsoever. And his wife almost thought that he was flat broke all the time, but he just kept at it. He was persevering through all of it. And the 13th company that he co-founded was Waze, and he ended up selling that company for $1 billion to Google. And now all he does is, you know, he works with entrepreneurs and he actually speaks like, you know, what I'm doing right here, right now. My next favorite guy is actually Jeff Bezos from Amazon. He was active from Miami as well too. And I love this picture of Jeff because this is how Amazon is like a complete universe. You can buy everything that you need from Amazon, and this guy started from his freaking garage.
Right.
That's where Amazon got started from. And now he's been like the richest person on the planet up until 2 years ago when Elon Musk like beat him to it, right? And now they're both competing like building spacecrafts.
Right.
He was actually adopted, so he's got a whole bunch of trauma. So it's like, I just want you to know, like, this is like two favorite stories because it just shows you, like, you know, what this journey can, what the possibilities are. So no matter where you are in your journey, it's endless. I mean, anything is actually quite possible. So in conclusion, what I want to say to you today is that the truth is, it's freaking hard.
Yeah.
Don't let it know what, it really, really is hard, but it's the most rewarding journey you will ever take.
Preach.
And I'm going to share with you the one thing that is going to actually get you through the most difficult periods and take you from wherever success you're trying to get to. And that is actually having grace and compassion for yourself. You have to understand that you're like literally a child on a journey of learning. If you see a child, which mostly probably mothers in here have children, your kids have to learn how to talk, how to walk, how to crawl. Did you ever be, you know, where you belittle them, they're like, hey, why aren't you walking properly, right? But that's what we do to ourselves when we're actually running a business. And it's like you have to have the same compassion as you would like a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old that's trying to walk.
Come on.
Yep, it's your baby.
Thank you.
It's your baby.